Welcome. Please put your phones on vibrate and welcome everyone to the Coastal Protection Restoration Authority Board meeting Wednesday, February 19th, 2025. And with that, we'll go ahead and start the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And, yeah. And, Madam, could you call the roll, please?
Chairman Dove,
Present.
Mr. Davidson, Mr. Bosworth,
Present.
Mr. Lane,
Present.
Lieutenant Governor Nungesser, Mr. Alford,
Here.
President Jewell,
Present.
Mr. Jordan, Mr. Bourgeois,
Here.
Mr. Hidalgo,
Here.
Mr. Carville,
Here.
Mr. Lane,
Here.
Representative Zarang,
Here.
Senator Henskins. You have a quorum.
And we have a quorum, and thank you, members. And a motion approve the agenda.
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Bourgeois, second by and Mr. Dalgo, second by Mr. Dalgo. Any public comments? Okay. Any public comments on the agenda? Any objections to the motions? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Approval of the minutes. Motion by Mr. Bourgeois, second by Mr. Alford. All in favor? Any public comments on the minutes? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Old business. Any members of the board would like to add anything? Members of the board? Seeing nothing, we move on. Implementation update. Mr. Glenn Leday, Executive Director of Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority. Mr. Leday.
Thank you, Chairman Dove and members of the board. Appreciate the opportunity to present the February 2025 implementation update today. With that, I'll go ahead and jump in. I know we've got a really good agenda. Appreciate the Corps coming here and talking about Lower Mississippi River Comprehensive Study, as well as Restore Retreat and their update. And then we have a really good update on the QIPRA program for you today. So really good agenda. And with that, I'll jump right into the implementation update. First, just always to touch on the number of projects that we've got ongoing. We've got 2 new projects that we kicked off in engineering and design this month, and so we're back up to 109 active projects. As you can see, we've got a really good number of projects in construction, 37 of those in construction, 15 of those are hurricane protection, 9 marsh creation, and then the series of other projects, some of which we'll touch on today. We've got another 68 in engineering and design that we're moving towards implementation for construction, and then those 4 planning studies, the 2 hurricane protection efforts, and then the 2 additional efforts, one of which you'll hear about today from Colonel Jones. And so with that, today wanted to focus on really a series of construction updates. So we have a lot of ongoing work, as we just highlighted. We've got a number of projects that will actually go to construction in the next several months that'll be advertised and bid. So a lot of activity and movement on the ground. And so wanted to highlight some of that for you today. And so just a couple of quick highlights of some projects that have just kicked off. The first is the LaBranch Shoreline Protection Project. If you remember, this is a project in St. Charles Parish. This is really kind of that completion of a regional shoreline protection effort. This particular project was actually funded with surplus dollars, approximately 13,000 linear feet of rock dike. And so that construction has started in January of this year. They're actually got access channel dredging that's ongoing. This is a project that's being led by Laura Crosby. It's obviously one of those projects we highlighted for you last year where you can see this work that's ongoing really almost from Interstate 10 right there between Baton Rouge and New Orleans. And so that rock replacement will begin next month. We'll have some really good photos of that and looking forward to showcasing the completion of that over the next several months. The overall project budget's approximately $25 million. So a lot of ongoing work there around that Lake Pontchartrain rim. We'll highlight another effort later in the presentation, but just a ton of good work going on there right there off of Interstate 10. The second one on there is a Quipper project. That's the Grand Bayou Ridge and Marsh Creation Restoration Project. That's a project in Plaquemines Parish. Similarly, we had highlighted this to you in detail last year. That project actually started construction in January of this year as well, January 12th. That project's being led by Weeks Marine with an estimated cost of $62.4 million. If you remember, that's approximately 356 acres of marsh creation along Grand Bayou and Plaquemines Parish. So another really good project, and that's got additionally approximately 10,657 linear feet of forested ridges along the western bank of Grand Bayou as well. So really good project there, and we'll continue to highlight those activities throughout this year. So with that, just wanted to do a detailed update on some construction activities that we have across the coast. The first of which is the Terrebonne H&C Bird Island restoration. And so we touched on this last year. This is a Bird Island project funded by NERDA, and you can see some of the aerial footage that's been taken. A lot of good activity has gone on the rock dike there. They are in the process of completing that work. With that, they will begin dredging later this year to complete that island. But just a couple of highlights of some work that you'll see. You can see the aerial footage that's going on there, but additional work that will go on later this year. They'll be doing 3 more remaining breakwaters. They will be placing the sand as well as additional bird ramps that will go on the island. And so it'll be a really great project. This is one of these NERDA bird islands similar to Queen Bess, and so just excited to see the work that'll go on there later this year. With that, we have local companies that have helped engineer and design this work. You can see there All South Consultant Engineers led this project with support from ELOS, Fugro, and APS. The contractors working on this are Weeks Marine and Patriot. And so always good to see the industry partners that have led the design and construction of these efforts. In addition to that, we wanted to highlight one of our critical river reintroduction projects in Louisiana. That's the river reintroduction into Bayou Lafourche. And so we did do that detailed update for the board a few months ago. And so that the project that's ongoing is the pumping capacity improvements, the 1,500 CFS pumping capacity improvements at Bayou Lafourche there at the Mississippi River in Ascension Parish in Donaldsonville. And so Bayou Lafourche Freshwater District is leading that effort. We've got some aerial footage of that ongoing work. You could see there the work that's ongoing now. Just want to highlight that this will bring that additional 1,500 CFS capacity to Bayou Lafourche, and so this is a really a 3-phase program, as you remembered, that the state is partnered with the Bayou Lafourche Freshwater District. I believe Dustin Rabelais is here as well, and they are leading this construction effort. But they have support from CPRA as well as DEQ on the revolving loan program, and so it's really a great partnership. And so as you'll see in the coming months and in the annual plan, we'll be working with Bayou Lafourche to complete this effort. This is the second of a 3-phase program. In addition to this, we've got the remaining dredging work that needs to take place on Bayou Lafourche so we can get that full capacity into the bayou. And so we've got this piece of it here in phase 2 that we're working with them on, and then we'll be working on the phase 3 dredging program in the coming years. So yeah, again, you've got the funding partners there, CPRA, DEQ, and the Bayou Lafourche Freshwater District that are helping to fund this program. That's being led by the contractor, Sea Level, doing a great job at this project, and then the engineering team of Stantec and Delta Coast Consultants. And so, again, I always want to highlight our industry partners here and the local partners that are working on this effort. So it's been really good to see that progress. And so this is obviously a large pump station, and so you will see that work continue for the next 2 years approximately. So want to just move on some of additional projects. So one of the other projects that we're moving to construction on is a really large rec use project that's part of the Atchafalaya Basin program. And so that is the Bayou Pigeon boat launch, another project that we gave a detailed update to the board on a couple of months ago. And so want to just highlight the groundbreaking activity that took place in I believe it was in December of this year. I'm losing track of time now. But yeah, it was really good partnership here with Iberville Parish. This is part of our Atchafalaya Basin program. And so rec use is a really important component of CPRA's program, and getting people out into the basin is really critical. And so with that, just want to showcase this video of some of the groundbreaking activities.
Iberville Parish Atchafalaya Basin project that has been funded by CPRA. So it's very impactful. Whether you're a fisherman, you're a craw fisherman, or you love to come out here to see birds in the Atchafalaya, it's very important.
Many people in our area make their living on these waterways, and having greater access and ease of access to the basin is key to their livelihood. So I want to thank CPRA and hope for their continued focus on the Atchafalaya Basin program. It is really vital.
And so as part of our Atchafalaya Basin program, this is funded with state dollars. And so this is, as we had mentioned previously, one of the key gateways to the Atchafalaya Basin, particularly on the eastern side, is this Bayou Pigeon boat launch. And so we'll be providing 7 new boat slips along with improved parking and other infrastructure there. And so excited to see that kick off. And so we've got again, a number of local partners. LA Contracting is leading that. They've got local offices here in Thibodaux in Louisiana. Neil Schaefer and Laterre and Fugro and Geo Engineers led the engineering effort. And so it should have that project completed this summer. And so we'll be doing a good ribbon cutting, but it'll be one of the largest rec use projects in the Basin program in recent years. Now, with that, want to highlight some of our annual plan activity. And so since our last board meeting in January, we've had a lot of activity on the public meeting side. And so want to highlight those activities. And so as we mentioned last month, after the presentation of the draft annual plan to the CPRA board, we then go on 3 in-person public meetings with 1 virtual meeting. And so we did do those across the state. You see there we had meetings in Lake Charles, Houma, and Jefferson. You see there Governor Dove presenting to the Houma presentation. And we had really good attendance across all 3 of those meetings. And we had really good comments so far that have already come in. And so right now we are working to field additional public comments. That comment period ends March 22nd of this year. And so we've already received 43 comments. We had at least 200 attendees across the 4 meetings. So really good representation from the public. And it's always good. We had really good stakeholder feedback at each one of those meetings. And so always excited to see the passion of our citizens in coastal Louisiana and the feedback that they provide. And so we'll be incorporating all of that into our draft annual plan that we will present back to you in April of this year. And so that'll be April 16th at our regular board meeting. And then from there, assuming approval, we would move into the presentations to the legislature. So with that, again, we have up until March 22nd to receive public comments for this draft annual plan. You can receive those comments 3 ways: either email at coastal@la.gov, online ap26.coastal.la.gov, or via mail at the address there. And so please provide that feedback prior to that deadline. And then with that, want to transition to some additional updates. The first of which want to give a parish project highlight. This is not a project that CPRA is involved in, but just want to highlight the ongoing work that our parishes are doing across the coast, and this is one of those. And so just continuing on that theme of shoreline protection in the Lake Pontchartrain Rim. This is a project that's being led by St. John the Baptist Parish. It's right there, really sort of on the parish line at St. Charles and St. John, and this is a really good effort that's funded by the parish's bonded Go Mesa monies, and so they've planned, engineered, designed, and now are constructing that shoreline protection project. And so this is actually the first of 2 components of this project. There's a northern component, but in this area, you know, the Lake Pontchartrain Rim has lost over 10 feet over the last several years of land. And so they are providing protection to that area to prevent further land loss. So really critical. That's under construction now and has really been going well. As we've kind of highlighted over the last several months, a lot of activity in the Lake Pontchartrain Basin, whether it was the work that we did with Tangipahoa Parish, the work that St. Charles is doing, as well as CPRA. There's been a number of efforts, the NRCS Marsh Creation Project there. So a lot of activity going on there and will be for the coming months. And then finally, before I wrap up, just want to highlight some additional updates of activities that are ongoing throughout the coast. The first of these is a grant award, and so this is an award for the Chandelier Island Restoration Project. This is an award from NIFWIF America, the Beautiful Grant, and so we received this award from the 2024 grant slate. It's $5 million to go towards that construction and engineering for the restoration of this island. Again, as we had highlighted last year, this is going to be one of the largest barrier island restorations in the state's history. So we really appreciate this grant award from NIFWIF. This will go to some of our other funding sources that will hopefully be restored in NERDA to contribute to the pot of funding that we need to kick this off. And so excited to see this come through, and really thankful for that confidence that NIFWIF has in us to deliver this large project. So appreciate that, and that's really something to be celebrated as we kick this off. And then in addition to that, I want to highlight a really big event that happened just a few weeks ago, and this is the Super Bowl Living Shoreline build work that took place in Lafourche Parish. This is an effort that was led by CRCL and NFL Green. CPRA had the ability, along with DNR and other agencies in wildlife and fisheries, to be part of the Super Bowl Sustainability Committee and had a chance to contribute in this great volunteer effort. You could see Mr. Bosworth and myself laying down some oysters and really contributing. The Saints cheerleaders were out, but there were a number of people in the audience. I know a ton of people contributed to this, and so you know, all of this volunteer work is fantastic. You see everybody chipping in, and it was really sort of a festival type event where we were able to build a living shoreline with marsh plantings. But it was really exciting to see everybody chip in and be part of that NFL Green experience. And so obviously I know that that everybody is really thankful for that work that took place, and was exciting to see and be part of that Super Bowl event. And so our team at Outreach and Engagement here at CPRA put together a great video, and they'll showcase that on our social media. In addition to that, we had a really good conference that took place at the LSU CPRA Center for River Studies last week. We partnered with We Work the Waterways on an event where we hosted 400 to 500 high school students from around the state to showcase the different opportunities that they could have in coastal and marine careers. And so we were really fortunate that we had a huge turnout. We had engineers such as Rudy Simino and Greg Grandy and other partners of our team that really worked with these high school students over 2 days and got to showcase the ability if you wanted to become an engineer, a scientist, or other contractor in the coastal industry. And in addition to that, we had partners from riverboat pilots and others in the marine industry that showcased what they do in this work. And so it was a really good event and had, as you can see, a ton of high school students from around the state come in and showcase that. That was both at our Center for River Studies as well as the Water Institute Estuary Room. Then in addition to that, we had another good event for the Cook-Off for the Coast in St. Bernard Parish over there in Mr. Lane's neck of the woods at Dockville Farms, and a really great event. Our outreach engagement team, you can see Adam was there with our tent, showcasing the work that we do at CPRA, along with all of our other partners in parishes and levee districts. A lot of good food and fun, and so always exciting to participate in these. I think that this turnout was really good. The weather was great, and so really good to see those types of events take place across our coast. Then finally, a couple of other housekeeping items. As we've talked about in that annual plan presentation, we have the really important Atchafalaya master plan work that CPRA is doing. This is, again, that multi-year process driven by cutting-edge science and extensive engagement from the locals. The highlight we want to give for you today is the project solicitation period for this master plan is ending on February 28th. So in just a few days, we want you to submit any feedback you have or any projects that you have that you would like considered in this planning process. Please submit that to us. You can do that in a variety of ways. We've got this QR code here that you can go ahead and submit your project ideas to us. Again, your input helps us gain that understanding of specific needs and challenges across the basin. And then any input that you provide, we will certainly use that feedback. We'll actually touch base with you on how this will be incorporated into the master plan. So that important deadline is coming up February 28th. And then, moving on to our federal advocacy work, I know that a lot of us here take part in the Shores advocacy. We've got the congressional fly-in that we do every year. Wanted to let everybody know that we have decided to reschedule that fly-in. So Neil McMillan is working on rescheduling those dates, and those will be coming out soon. We had intended originally to fly in late March and decided to push that back to better align with what's going on in D.C. later in the year. And so Neil's working on all of that, but we appreciate everybody's support. I know that Shores is a big advocacy event for everyone that's here today, and excited for when that's going to take place, and Neil will be reaching out to everyone to let us know when that new date's going to be. But I know it's important, obviously, if you are in D.C., either for upcoming events like the Mississippi Valley Flood Control Association or other things, to do what you can to continue to advocate for the ability to get revenue to contribute to coastal protection and restoration, and talk about the ability to share offshore revenue. So as Neil reaches out, we'll be scheduling that event and looking forward to it when that comes. And then another couple of dates. The Coastal Day at the Legislature is a great event every year. That is scheduled for Monday, May 12th, so we wanted to put that on everybody's calendar. And so that'll be coming up. That is our day where we have a ton of events. Obviously have the address from Chairman Dove and the governor at the press room. We've got events at our LSU Center for River Studies where we have networking with businesses as well as our CPRA group. And then other events followed by the event, the social at the Pentagon Barracks. And so a great day for Coastal in Louisiana, and looking forward to it. Again, that's Monday, May 12th. So put that on your calendars. And then finally, just talking about dates, is the upcoming State of the Coast Conference. And so this is hosted by our partners at CRCL. This will be coming up May 20th through 22nd, 2025. And so if you haven't registered already, please go and do that. It's a great event every 2 years. Looking forward to it, to really dialogue with everybody that's in this industry, both from science, engineering, construction, all these different types of groups that are doing work from both agencies, NGOs, engineers, contractors. So really excited about that. But that's, again, coming up May 20th to 22nd. And then finally, as always, connect with us on social media or at our website. And so we'll be continuing that dialogue both on the Atchafalaya Master Plan, our CPRA Master Plan, as well as the annual plan. So there'll be a lot of engagement this spring on all three of those activities, as well as everything else we do. So thank you all, and happy to answer any questions.
Members, any questions? Any questions? Seeing none. Thank you very much, Glenn.
Thank you, Chairman Doug.
Great presentation as usual. And our next one is the Lower Mississippi River Comprehensive Management Study. Colonel Cullen Jones with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Colonel Jones.
Good morning, Chairman Dove and members of the board. Greatly appreciate the opportunity to provide you all an update on the Lower Mississippi River Comprehensive Management Study. I'm also really excited to be joined by our senior project manager for the study, Ms. Ann Huelos. Just to give you some context, she leads the Integrated Project Office, where we have brought together all of our technical subject matter experts that are looking at this mega study. We've co-located them within the district to keep them focused as we deliver this study for the nation. Why is that important? As the New Orleans district, as the lead district, this is a district priority, but more so, it is a division priority. When you talk to Major General Kim Peoples, how we are focusing our efforts across 6 districts, 3 divisions, across 7 states to make this happen. And then as such, having a chance to update our senior leadership up at headquarters, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, this is a core priority. And we're excited to provide you an update on why that is. So bottom line up front, working alongside our state, federal, and local teammates, we are exercising a generational opportunity on the Lower Mississippi River. This is going to give us an opportunity to examine the comprehensive management of the Lower Miss with the goals of increasing the resiliency of the Mississippi Rivers and Tributaries project to be adaptable for future use and flood risk for the next 50 to 100 years. 50 to 100 years to be able to keep that moving forward. Ultimately, and we're going to talk throughout this update, how this is going to provide us actionable recommendations, modifications to current operations, possible construction of other features to support, ultimately, to improve that. Key to this, and you'll see this also as a theme throughout, is the intrinsic need for public and stakeholder engagement. The massive scale of this project is going to require it across all 7 states, given all the interests that we have in ensuring the safe reliability of the Lower Mississippi River, which I always articulate is a key instrument of our national power. Realizing that we are standing upon the shoulders of giants, we're not starting from ground zero. We are developing some state-of-the-art models to support this, but we're also leveraging multiple foundational studies and great works that have been done in the past to help inform it, not only from within the Corps, but from across our state and NGO and academic partners. We're also looking at this from not just a core set of solutions, but a whole of government process that's going to enable us to look at all the federal agencies and how we can support with them and the state. And then most importantly, as we look within the great state of Louisiana, how we are partnering with the Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority and complementing their 50-year, $50 billion coastal master plan to ensure the resiliency of South Louisiana now and into the future. So why are we looking at this? As you can all appreciate, the Corps of Engineers working along our state, local partners have been managing this river for the last 100 years. General Jadwin's plan has been phenomenal in enabling us to prevent another catastrophic flood and manage the project design flood. And although it has been effective in managing this river, I think we can all agree that the river has changed over time. Just look at, on the slide here, you can see the operation based off of weather variability of the Bonnie Carey spillway more frequently. We have operated it 5 times since 2016. We executed it twice in 2019. Closer to my own personal experiences, we've had to go through and construct the underwater saltwater sill at River Mile 64 on the lower Mississippi River 3 years in a row due to low flows. So that weather variability shows that it is a good opportunity for us to understand how we can adjust and operate this system into the future. Another great example, as you can see, in 2011, even though the precipitation resulted in only 6% of the project design storm, measured flows on the river were between 78 to 91% of the project design flood flows. And everybody remembers that the project design flood for the Mississippi River and tributaries system is 3 million cubic feet per second. So a great opportunity for us to understand how we can ensure the resiliency and adaptability of this system in the future. And we got that opportunity under the Water Resource and Development Act of 2020, Section 213, where we were authorized to execute a comprehensive study of the lower Mississippi River from Cape Girardeau, Missouri to the Gulf of Mexico across a 5-year, $25 million program, ultimately to get to those actionable recommendations that we could present in the form of a chief's report in December of 2027. Furthermore, our Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works provided implementation guidance that has enabled us to be able to move forward to refine that opportunity. You can see those multiple purposes that we're looking through, starting off with our priority missions, of course, looking at hurricane, storm, and flood risk management, navigation, of course, across our nation's #1 inland waterway, and then the opportunities for ecosystem and environmental restoration. At the same time, looking at the comprehensive aspects of this, where applicable and compatible, how can we also leverage this national resource to support water supply, hydropower, recreation, or other purposes? The other good news is realizing that it goes across 7 states. In December of 2022, we received additional authorization under Section 8343 to go 100% federal so we could start moving out for it. Ultimately, getting to actionable recommendations like I talked about earlier, potentially construction of new projects, structural operational modifications of existing projects, or monitoring adaptive management measures for existing projects, just to name a few, and we can go into more details as we discuss. To think this is a mega study is an understatement. Looking at the study area boundaries, it is huge. As I stated, from Cape Girardeau, Missouri, all the way to the Gulf of America. That is 975 river miles. You can see it incorporates the boundaries of the Mississippi Rivers and Tributaries Project, but at the same time, we also have these coastal basins which were specifically listed in the Water Resource Development Act of 2020, enabling us to look at the comprehensive management of the flows of the Mississippi and the Atchafalaya, which is a part of the Mississippi Rivers and Tributaries Project. But as you can also see here, we cross 7 states. And then to do that, we've been incorporating, working with the governor's offices and their designees, of course, of which, Chairman Dove and Glenn are for the great state of Louisiana to support, to get their inputs throughout. We have multiple federal agencies throughout from 10. I talked about the 6 districts that encompass across 3 major subordinate commands or 3 divisions within the Corps of Engineers, and then 44 federally recognized tribes. Communication, and collaboration is key, just given the size and scope of this, to ultimately get to a report with actionable recommendations. So as I stated, what have we accomplished to date? And it's been amazing the amount of work working along our federal, state, and local partners to move this massive project forward towards that chief's report. But with the receipt of 100% federal funding under the 2022 Water Resource Development Act, we were able to move forward and start looking at this system. First off, executing, as you can see there, what we called our Phase 0. That was our internal homework where we did our regional Corps of Engineers collaboration, where we brought together our subject matter experts to create that inventory of existing data and models and those studies. Once again, standing upon the shoulders of giants, establishing the governance structure. We just recently executed a large-scale quarterly governance meeting where we brought in both state, federal, and tribal entities to provide them a key update. Appreciate Glenn attending for Louisiana for that one. And then also those initial problems, opportunities, objectives, and constraints of the study to help us focus it. We also looked at doing planning charrettes to help us refine those. Then most notably, those interagency meetings where we're coordinating with both the federal and state entities. Then bringing the public in on a scale rarely seen within the Corps of Engineers, executing over 32 public meetings across 7 states. You can see them designated on the right, getting that input from the public to help us refine our measures and opportunities and other areas so that we can push that forward. Most notably, we were able to take all of that input that we received from the states, from the public comments, and post that in a public scoping report so everyone could see through transparency what we are receiving and how we're incorporating that into the future studies. You can also see part of this study, we've been executing quarterly public updates where we will go online, have a large amount of people join us, and that's an opportunity to ask additional questions or provide additional comments throughout the study process. At any point in time, Ann and her team is ready to deploy anywhere upon request to provide a stakeholder update. If they are requested, they'll move to that location, give the information where we're at, receive the feedback, and that helps us move this process forward. And we're also continuing on with great interaction with our federally recognized tribal partners, and then also the state partnering groups, as I talked about, where we have those designees from the 7 states coming together in April and October to provide focused updates for them. So moving this process forward in a very effective manner. So how do we get to that Chiefs report in December 27 that's going to provide those actionable recommendations? As you can see right now where we're at on the timeline, we are going through the development of alternatives. All of those measures, all of those recommendations that we received from the public, federal, and state agencies we're going through and reviewing. We're running multiple models. We've actually built hydrologic and sediment models for both the lower Mississippi River and the Atchafalaya to enable us to run multiple scenarios to see which of these measures could produce positive benefits for the comprehensive management of this river system. Once again, we're continuing to work with our federal agencies to move through the NEPA process and identification of those environmental modeling requirements to ensure that we can ensure sustainable development with also good ecosystem stewardship. We continue those strategic engagements with our partners and agencies. Later on, I'm going to show you the stakeholder engagement plan across the multiple echelons and realize how important it is for us to continue at all levels to receive that feedback. As you can also see, we continue our interactions with the tribal nations and then also continuing to expand our community outreach. Why is that important? As we go through our interactions, through those quarterly public updates, there's also going to be opportunities to provide direct feedback, such as during the public technical and policy review in June of 26, after we get to our tentatively selected plan in February of 26. And then also, as we get to the actual Chiefs report in September of 27, that's going to be opportunity for the state to provide additional direct feedback as we go through this process, and ultimately getting us to that large-scale Chiefs report for this mega study. One of the most important things, and I really appreciate Ann being up here, that has been a focus of the study team is, given the fact we're going across 7 states, multiple interests throughout, is how do the states see themselves in this study? That is a constant question that we have. We also brought it up during the last quarterly governance update to them. What I can say here, a great partner with the Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority and along with other stakeholders throughout Louisiana since the project inception has been instrumental. And what I can tell you is there are many complementary efforts here in Louisiana. You can see some of them located on the map to the right. And then with leveraging that long-term relationship that we have with CPRA, seeing how we can be complementary to the coastal master plan. A couple things, we're evaluating these measures, trying to develop those alternatives or those different array of measures that can potentially produce positive benefits. But some of them I'd like to share with you that have come out of the recent modeling runs and we're continuing to evaluate. But one of the most exciting ones is the dynamic operation of the Old River Control Complex. As you can all appreciate, that is a critical piece of infrastructure for the nation that maintains the 70-30 split between the Mississippi River and the Atchafalaya. Going through these modeling runs, we're seeing how do we have to stay static? Are there opportunities for us to shift the flows between the Atchafalaya and the Mississippi River for either environmental and ecosystem benefits? Can we adjust it to help reduce risk during high water season for flood risk management? Are there also other opportunities during low water to be able to maintain navigation or reduce the potential impacts of saltwater intrusion? Those are some aspects that we could potentially come back once we go through the total evaluation, enabling us to conduct an update to our water control manual for that system so that we can dynamically or forecast informed operate that system to the benefit of the entire basins for both the Atchafalaya and the Mississippi, lower Mississippi. Other areas that you have available is evaluating dredging opportunities for ecosystem restoration in both the Atchafalaya and the lower Miss. And then also, as you can see, modification of dredging and flow management to improve the flows on both of those to ensure their sustainability in the future. All of those are continuing under evaluation, but being able to get those incorporated early and that feedback from our state partners such as CPRA has been instrumental throughout. Key to this, as I said, given the size and scope of this study, is stakeholder collaboration. Just to give you an idea across just engagements, public meetings, tribal and federal and state, as we've gone through this process, they are regular and routine, enabling us to continue to keep the pulse, get updated feedback, and keep everyone on the journey with us through this process as we move towards getting that draft report out for public review, and then being able to get their input throughout that process. We just recently ran our last quarterly public update on the 28th of January, one of our largest attendant. Great discussions throughout. And then at the same time, we're looking to continue that in the April-May timeframe with the next update to the public. Specifically, not that I'm partial, I'm completely biased, but it's the interaction with CPRA has been absolutely phenomenal throughout this, just given the size and scope of it, the Corps working along CPRA, aligning across multiple Coast Protection and Restoration Authority efforts. You can see some of them here with the Atchafalaya Basin Master Plan, Lower Mississippi River Management, Upper Basin Diversion Program, and the Coastal Master Plan, of course. And then specifically, as the state representative, they have been intrinsic as we've stood up the state partnering group, which I stated meets in October and April. Those quarterly public updates, they always have attendees online requesting information or providing comments throughout. And then the interagency groups that have just recently met in October of 2024. All those times, CPRA has been actively engaged with us along this journey, providing very cogent input and support. And then once again, I want to thank Chairman Dove, Glenn, and Brian that have been actively engaged throughout this process with the Corps. If there's one slide that you take away from here, it's this one. And the reason why is that QR code in those emails over to the left. This enables you to get to the study website, see the latest information that we have been able to transmit out to the public, our state and federal partners. Writing the email to the LMR Comp website will get you on our stakeholder database so you can receive regular and routine updates. And then throughout that, we're excited as we continue to progress on and develop these measures into an array of alternatives and ultimately to a tentative selected plan that's going to be able to be evaluated comprehensively to ensure that we can, once again, execute the resiliency and comprehensive management of the lower Mississippi River for the next 50 to 100 years. So once again, I greatly appreciate the time of the board on this update and look forward to provide continued ones in the future.
And Colonel, on behalf of CPRA and our staff, I want to thank yourself and your staff. Y'all have expeditiously gotten us all the information we've asked for, and we met with y'all. We had a quarterly meeting on all the projects, and everything is moving accordingly. And we thank y'all for your aggressiveness on getting the projects of Louisiana through, along with this massive study that we've been working with y'all with. And with that, we have a question by Mr. Bourgeois.
Yeah, actually, kind of three questions, but it's simple. It was a great presentation. One of the things I was thinking about as you were looking at the ability to include that in the Terrebonne Basin, Barataria Basin are included in the study area. And in a similar way that you're looking to potentially manipulate the 3070 flow, further down, we have obviously the Morganza to the Gulf project with 22 flood control gates, gates, and then 23 environmental gates. It would seem to me that this could open an opportunity, if nothing else, to consider manipulating the flow through those gates for similar environmental benefits inside that basin. That would be a change to the operational protocol that's set up initially for it, but it would look like this may present us an opportunity to move in that direction, because it's a shame to have such tools and just leave them open all of the time when there might be ways that we can actually get benefits out of using some of those things during certain times of the year. So I just was curious if you thought that that was something that could be brought in, and if so, I know that several groups have been discussing this with us and trying to figure out how we take that next step, and we kind of hadn't gotten there yet, but this may be an opportunity. I was going to ask that question.
Yeah, thank you, sir. And thank you, Mr. Bourgeois. Yeah, I mean, I think we'd love to talk more with you and your team about that and what the specific desires or outcomes of modifying those different gate openings would be. One I can say now, one of the things that the team is looking at is, like Colonel said, how we operate the old river control structure, but also the Morganza, the Bonnie Carey, and all of the structures of the MR&T. And so as we kind of look beyond that, if there's other opportunities, I mean, now's the time for us to investigate that. So I'd love to have maybe a follow-up with you on some of the specifics there.
Yeah, and the Upper Barataria Basin Risk Reduction System the same way. It's going to have control elements that it's kind of foolish for us to not maximize. Second question I had is you named the 6 core districts that were involved in the study, and one of them's not like the other, Mobile, right? And I was just curious, what does Mobile's expertise bring to this table in this discussion?
Mr. Bourgeois, when you think about it and you look at those coastal basins, it crosses district boundaries. And then when we think about the area of responsibility for the Mobile district, they have interest in the Mississippi Sound and those areas as well. So having them on board alongside the other 5 districts has proved great benefits. You know, we've had great interactions with the Mississippi Sound Coalition. We've actually had both delegations from Louisiana and Mississippi at the Bonnie Carey control structure to have discussions on the opportunities that we're seeing through this study in regards to potentially reducing operations of Bonnie Carey, as you heard from Ann, but also ensuring that there's also opportunities for tiered studies such as environmental resiliency within the Mississippi Sound that can be articulated. So having those teammates on the ground with Mobile has been incredibly helpful.
Yeah, nothing against them for sure. Just figured there was a reason they were there. It wasn't by accident. And final question, and this is, I think something that's probably going to come out of this study. You talked about the sill under the freshwater sill, or saltwater sill, I should say, under the river. I mean, that's kind of way out of my wheelhouse, right? Every levee we build, we're intending it to be above water, right? But my question is basically, do you think, since you're going back to this sill every year, it seems, that there's any possibility of some permanence in the structure that's there, and how would you go about doing that?
I'm going to answer that one question in 2 parts. The first part is we are currently working alongside the Department of Transportation and Development, re-looking at our saltwater mitigation plan for the Mississippi River Ship Channel. What does that mean is working alongside DOTD, we're reviewing, as we deepen the Mississippi River Ship Channel, the original design of the underwater sill where we elevate it to -55. Of course, we've increased that size based off of conditions that in the previous year, but ultimately that may come out if there is a potential structural solution or an alternative location for the underwater sill to provide that aspect of reduction for saltwater intrusion. The other aspect, going back to the Lower Mississippi River Comprehensive Management Study, one of the measures that they're currently looking at is mounding sand on the east bank of the Lower Mississippi River in the vicinity of the crevasses to potentially help reduce the impacts of low flows on the Mississippi River and the intrusion up there. So looking at multiple angles on how that will go through. And as we get updates on the Mississippi River Ship Channel saltwater mitigation study or update, we'll be able to provide that as well to CPRA.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'm sure 3's the limit. So, but great presentation. Thanks for everything you do for us. So.
Okay, and Mr. Representative Sarang. Well,
I'll talk with.
okay, wait.
All right, there we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colonel, thanks for being. Good to see you again, sir. I didn't see it in your presentation, but I did go to your QR code, and you do reference it, and I just wanted to make sure. And it's great that the 7 states are a part of this and incorporated into the overall plan. And it's often handled in the Farm Bill and not in the MRT. And I'm referring to the Gulf Hypoxia Action Plan. And it does reference in your projects that is one of the components. I know it could be viewed as ecosystem restoration, water quality and management, but it didn't reference it that. But that is part of the overall plan and an aspect of this effort, right?
So we are looking at the hypoxia plan. I think the study is not going to specifically target the hypoxia issue. There are other efforts underway, but that is a plan that we are looking at and looking at ways that the modifications that might come out of this study could provide benefit to it. But the focusing strictly on the hypoxia is not a prime priority for the study. But I do envision that as we look at difference in flows and other measures, that could have positive impacts that are in alignment with the plan.
No, and that's good to hear. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be a priority in a lot of programs. And so the fact that you are incorporating that and looking at it, and it's important to at least the Gulf of America and especially here on the coast of Louisiana, that we look at that and try to address it. Other question I had, and it's not specifically related to this, and I don't know if you can give a brief update or, Mr. Chairman, if we could add it to a future agenda, is the MRGO ecosystem revitalization effort. I'm sure y'all still working on that, and how's that going? Is there any update you can provide, or maybe at a later date we can get an update on that effort?
Representative, I appreciate the question. I do know that we are working with CPRA on establishing an agreement to be able to move forward on that study, and then we'll be happy to provide a detailed update at our next opportunity.
Okay, so the agreement still hasn't been executed?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so we're currently working on the project management plan. So the team's putting that together. We're working that in concert with Glenn's office, Executive Director Lede. We're also aligning on how we're going to do the implementation of it. It's been transitioned to 100% federal, so we're just kind of aligning all of that so we can be in a position to update the PMP and execute an agreement from there.
Oh, we're getting close?
Yes, we're getting close. We're getting close.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Sarang. Mr. Dowgle.
Thank you. Colonel, thank you for your presentation. And as the Chaffalaya representative on the CPRA board, whenever we start hearing the potential of a 70-30 split being modified, it brings us up and we raise our eyebrows. And we remember the 2011 when the Morganza was open and impact it had in a Chaffalaya. And our concern is, if there is a change from 70-30 to whatever it would be, what is the impact to the flow lines in the Chaffalaya? And what are the impacts to navigation, the lower navigation? As you know, it's one of the important things for the Chaffalaya River. And every time the study comes up and we're able to make a comment, we like to remind that that probably if there's a modification of the 70-30 split, it's the Atchafalaya River that's going to be impacted, and impacted detrimentally as compared to the help that it would give to the Mississippi River and to flooding on the Mississippi River. So just comments and reminders that we're concerned, the Atchafalaya people are concerned about modifying the 70-30.
Mr. Aldago, I appreciate those comments, and we fully recognize that these measures are going to be fully evaluated for their benefits and shared throughout this journey. Ultimately, when you think about it, this will set up a complex set of decision trees to be able to enable us to execute those dynamic operations if we do move off the 70-30. But as such, we've completely received, and as you can see in the public scoping report, the comments that we received from the Atchafalaya Basin have been incorporated.
Acknowledge that, but just have to make the comments and bring it to the table. So thank you for the opportunity and thank you for the report.
Yes, Mr. Davidson.
Thank you both for being here. One thing I wanted to discuss with both of you is, and I was at the meeting at Bonacary, which was great, and really appreciate y'all putting that together. One of the conversations that we had there was on the funding of this study, and $25 million over 5 years. Is that going to be enough? I think I already know the answer to that, but following up from that, what is our FY26 capability going to be looking like for this project? And are we already in motion at making that request? And then if possible, or if necessary, looking forward to FY27 to add additional funding to that?
Thank you, Mr. Davidson, and it's nice to see you again, sir. Great question about our funding. So we've been appropriated to date $9.5 million. So we've not been appropriated the entirety of the 25. We are set, assuming we do receive that appropriation, that we will complete the study within $25 million. And so the scope has been crafted in such a way such that we can complete it with $25 million. Would more money be nice? Where we envision is making tiered off recommendations for additional studies. And that's where that above $25 million appropriation would really be needed for, is to fund any recommended tiered studies. But going back to your question about FY26 and looking ahead even to FY27, we're still looking for funding within FY25. So we have enough funds to last us, we think, till about July. We're actually working on that right now just to see how long we can make those the dollars we have now lasts. So we have asked for an additional $4 million in FY25. And I'll have to check the numbers for FY26. I believe it's $7 million that we've expressed capability for. And then similarly in FY27. So we do continue to work that through our budget process and continue to ask for those appropriations so that we can complete the study on time.
Awesome. And, staying on the funding topic, another question I have is, a big part of this is navigation as well, right? And when we think about low water spots in that Memphis area, also notice hydropower on here, the possibility of it. Those are activities that typically come out of other budget items in the Corps. Are we looking at using existing efforts to provide studies on, say, 12-foot channel on the lower Mississippi River, or 9-foot channel or 12-foot channel on the J. Bennett Johnson? Are we looking at kind of coupling that money to, make this $25 million stretch a little bit further?
So we are actually looking at a initial level of analysis on the 12-foot channel. That is a comment that's come up quite a bit in our public scoping and also has come up through the Mississippi River Commission inspection trip. So we are doing an initial investigation within the LMR comp study on the construction of a 12-foot channel. That'll be a kind of a standalone analysis that will provide a recommended set of what the next steps would look like should the Corps move forward with constructing a 12-foot channel. When it comes to other appropriations and other authorities, you're spot on. There's a lot of work, and there's already a lot of authorities already on the river. And so in kind of looking at the comments that we received and kind of going through that screening process, one of the things we looked at is there already an authority to tackle this issue? We know we can't solve every problem on the river under this comprehensive study, so we are looking for ways to kind of move things to other authorities or other efforts that are synergistic that can kind of take that and move forward. So that is a part of the study process.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I also understand that, Inland Waterway Trust Fund has a significant amount of funding in it right now. A lot of that, especially if we're thinking of new starts on dredging, typically are funded by the Inland Waterway Trust Fund. So just want to make sure that we are opening every toolbox that we have in order to tackle this problem, and making sure that we're communicating with all stakeholders, not only this board, but Inland Waterway User Board, our congressional delegation, other congressional delegations up and down the Mississippi River, and making sure that, we're not leaving any stone unturned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Davidson. Colonel, on Neptune, 119,000 CFS that y'all modifying down to 80,000 CFS, is there a timeline on it? And where are we at on it?
You're talking about in regards to
To
the
the-
environmental structures on the Neptune
On the
crevasse?
Neptune.
I believe we're going through our final analysis on the updated environmental structures to be able to maintain the 2019 flow regime that occurred there. And then we should be seeing them get completed this summer, and then we can actually go through and actually execute that and get it in place. The good news there, as you can be aware of, is that they've been able to update that system so that we actually enable some chevroning or land creation behind that to help reduce the flows. So excited that we're able to balance both the navigation needs on the Mississippi River while reducing flows, but also allow for the continued land recreation behind that site. So we'll get you a further update on that as we continue to refine those final plans.
And the plan is still to bring it down to about 80,000 CFS?
Get it down to the manageable level that was in 2019 so that we're not capturing too much of the flows from the Mississippi River.
Has Mardi Gras or Neptune increased any, or it's pretty well holding?
So currently, right now, they're both in a state of, as our hydrologists like to call, dynamic equilibrium. So we continue to monitor them regularly to ensure that they don't present a clear and present danger to the navigation on the Mississippi River. If so, we will up our action plan to ensure that we can maintain the nation's #1 inland waterway.
Thank you very much. Any other questions, members? With that, as usual, Colonel, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you very much, Board.
Thank you. And next, we have Restore and Retreat update on West Grand Terre planning and Port Fourchon terracing. Representatives Joseph Ogeron and Polly Glover with Restore or Retreat.
Thank you, Chairman Dove. Thank you, board members, Mr. Lede, for the opportunity to come here as Executive Director of Restore Retreat and give a little project review of 2 projects that we did, following up on some of the coastal restoration projects that happened in the area. I got just going to do a very quick overview for those in the audience or who aren't aware, but basically Restore Retreat's 25 years old and was started by people in the Bayou region in Lafourche and Terrebonne who recognize that the Barataria and the Terrebonne Basin are 2 of the most productive yet at the same time rapidly eroding basins in our nation, and that something needed to be done. So we predate Hurricane Katrina and CPRA, but basically focusing on large-scale restoration efforts, which basically became the master plan for CPRA. We're supported by a lot of oil companies in the area, oil majors like Shell, and as well as national NGOs like the National Wildlife Federation, and also lots of locally coastally conscious people in the Bayou region. We're based out of Nichols, always have been, and happy to be moving with CPRA and BitNep into the new Nichols State Coastal Center later this year. Let's see. Primary goals has evolved to being supporting CPRA's master and annual plan, specifically on all the projects in the Barrett area and Terrebonne Basin, engaging legislative and policymakers at all levels of government, from councilmen all the way up to our federal delegation in Washington, on the needs, of course, going on, bringing people on educational tours, such as Neptune Pass, where we went with many of the people here in the room, governor's office as well, entertaining foreign scholars coming in, many of them from Japan and Italy, who want to see how Louisiana has basically doing nature-based shoreline restoration, stabilization, risk reduction, and coastal restorations. And lastly, of course, where we really evolved, which is going to be pretty much the focus of this presentation, is volunteer efforts. Whether it's on Earth Day doing a Love to Boot cleanup, or the West Grand Terre planting, as we'll go into detail, and Ducks Unlimited, ConocoPhillips's terraces that are being built outside of Fouchon, where we planted mangroves. With that, I'm going to hand over to Ms. Polly, who's going to talk about one of the first restoration efforts that we did.
Hey, good morning, Chairman Dove, members of the board. Happy to be here this morning to present to you two projects that Restore Retreat has had an ongoing effort in the lower Barataria Basin. The first one that we're going to introduce to you is the historic island of West Grand Terre. It's important, before we get into the current restoration, to look back to November of 2022, when Restore Retreat commenced our first restoration of the island. You can see that there was a phase 1 planting that occurred. It was 10 acres of vegetation encompassing 2 species, vermilion smoothchord, as well as black mangroves, on an approximate 10-acre site. Volunteers were led out there, and that restoration has completed, and we're happy to report that it is fully vegetating and regrowing. Most recently, however, which is the project that we're here to discuss today, is the West Grand Terre planting that occurred in October of 2024. And we'll start with saying that the funding mechanism for that were 3 primary funders. It was a grant from the CPRA Partnership Trust Fund, as well as a grant from Restore America's Estuaries and Citgo, with a private donation for vegetation coming from 5S. We also had, you can see on the next slide, we had other collaborators on the project. In October, we had 37 volunteers who came out to the island, planting approximately 8,200 plants, 3 species, sand oaks as a test plot that we placed along the barrier dunes. We also planted vermilion smoothchord and black mangroves, mimicking the already existing habitat. The goal of this particular project, once we realized that we had further work that needed to be done, was to go in and do a shoreline stabilization along the rock revetment, which was having some erosion. That was after communicating with the CPRA that they thought that additional vegetation was needed. With that, I'm going to lead you into a very special video that was produced, and you'll also get an opportunity to find out my personal connection to this island, which has probably led to Joe and I getting the opportunity to work together. So without further ado, we'll introduce you to this very special island.
Sorry, I'm going to get the volume up here.
Altered its purpose. Once a home base for pirate Jean Lafitte and his Baratarians to plunder passing ships. Later, the site of Fort Livingston, a staging area for the Confederate Army during the Civil War. Today, Grand Terre Island protects Louisiana's coastline as a buffer from storm surges. But it has taken a beating since its inhabitants abandoned it in the 1870s.
This particular area was impacted during the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. There was a significant amount of oil and mats of oil that washed up on the shoreline.
The oil spill on April 20th, 2010 poisoned Grand Terre's ecosystem of tidal ponds, estuaries, and vegetation, compounding the island's habitat and land loss from hurricanes and storms.
When the storms come in, these islands are built to take those waves and break those wave momentums down therefore protecting our inland communities, lowering the effects of the storms. In addition to that, this island is home to some critical habitat, so our vegetation today is going to serve dual purposes.
To prevent Grand Terre from losing more ground as a strategic storm buffer, volunteers with Restore Retreat planted 6,500 clusters of black mangrove and vermilion smooth cordgrass.
The vegetation is going to help with sediment retention to protect the island so that when the storms do come in, then helps to lower the storm surge and the storm speed and height. Then additionally, the vegetation is going to provide homes for our migratory species, our birds, our fisheries, communities. The island is home to a unique species of birds we've got skimmers and avocets and two species of pelicans that we see quite frequently.
One of the important things, the vegetation that the volunteers are putting out here, the roots of that vegetative material, in a wetland situation, you can kind of think of that as the branches and the trunk of the tree, and then the leaves are like the leaves on a tree. So that branch, actually, those roots that are in the ground, they'll expand and they'll grow and they'll allow the marsh platform to keep pace with sea level rise over time. That organic matter, that organic layer on top of the mineral layer, the sand and the silt and sediment that's here.
$8 billion from the Deepwater Horizon oil spill settlement fund much of Louisiana's coastal restoration efforts. However, the revenue stream ends in 2032. Louisiana is now looking for replacement funding, with initiatives including Constitutional Amendment Number 1, voters passed in November 2024. It dedicates federal revenues the state receives from renewable energy sources such as wind and solar to the Coastal Protection and Restoration Fund. State Representative Joseph Ogeron authored the legislation.
Anyone who lives up and down Bayou Lafourche, Grand Isle is important, and West Grand Terre is kind of like the sister island that you can't get to, by car, that you have to get to by boat. And the additional monies that Louisiana would get, not only from the renewables, but from additional oil and gas revenues, would help fund the coastal restoration plan, the master plan for years beyond whenever the BP oil spill runs out.
The planting supports barrier island restoration, one of the key techniques that the Coastal Protection Restoration Authority uses to restore coastal wetlands.
We dredged sediment from about 5 miles away and piped it onto the islands, create a marsh platform. So behind me, this is where I'm standing, was open water before the project was built. The sediment was filled in. Eventually, it's going to vegetate up and we'll have a nice marsh platform. We're out here today with Restore Retreat to get that vegetation growing.
For Polly, the volunteer effort is a full circle moment. As she was planning the two-phase planting project, she discovered a personal connection.
There was a marine lab that was here on the island, and it was built in 1955 to 1958. It was built for the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries, and it was home to our fisheries biologists and trained a lot of the state's biologists. It was a very well-built structure, withstood a lot of storms. We've just now recently learned that I have the personal connection to it, learning in 2022 that through some opportunities for me to plant the island, that my father was the one who designed and built the marine lab. He was the project engineer and designer.
The lab closed in 2005 after Hurricane Katrina heavily damaged the island. Today, surrounding vegetation swallows the remains of Fort Livingston, not a sign of decay, but one of renewal, as Grand Terre reclaims its habitat, putting the island on solid ground again.
Thank you all very much for the 5-minute attention span to be able to go through that. But it was a good piece that highlighted the efforts that we did. Yesterday we were there with members of CPRA, and this is a drone shot that pretty much shows that area that we planted that was pretty much a desolate, it was sand, nothing but sand, but you could see from the planting a lot of vegetation has taken over. Some of the plants that there's Greg Grandy standing next to some that I remember while we were there, he planted getting stuck in the mud. There's a mangrove that we planted that has my drone in it that you could see right above. And there's a group shot, kind of the hair plug style of the plants planted in October that are growing. And lastly, that's the picture from the drone as he puts his hand in it from the other side. So Just a few little pictures.
Members,
So-
before we start with the fish on terraces, let me back up just to give you an update. We all know that we had a historic event known as about 10 inches of snow that actually hit the barrier islands and the coastal communities. When we went out yesterday, it was important that we check the plants. So members of some of the younger scientists actually from the CPRA joined us yesterday, and we got to do a field assessment. Looking at the numbers, it appears that about 80% of the Vermilion smooth cord have survived, which is pretty good. We also saw signs of rejuvenation with them. We also noticed that it's probably in the range of 50 to 60% of the black mangroves showing signs of stress as, impacted from the snow, mostly with the tops of the plants being burnt, which we expect those to come back. The island is alive, it's thriving. I can share with you what we saw, in addition to skimmers, which is a beautiful shorebird. We also saw, I think it was a greenish heron, and we saw, laughing gulls, 2 species of pelicans. Least terns also were noted on the island yesterday. So the island, every time we go out there, is constantly changing. It's quite a privilege to go out. We do anticipate another visit to the island in April to check on the vegetation as well as to see if additional restoration and support is needed, mostly because those islands really are our first line of defense against these storms, so they're critical. Moving on to the very next collaboration. You want to introduce it?
Yeah, the Port Fourchon terraces and living shoreline. So basically, give you an idea, you see Port Fourchon at the bottom left here, and the plants that we did were pretty much, if you could see the cursor here, it's pretty much as you get off the elevated highway and you turn left to go towards Grand Isle, you'll see the terraces right there off on the side of the road.
Yes. So Joe and I have been in collaboration with Ducks Unlimited as well as Woodside Energy. And what ended up happening is that through the process of this collaboration, you'll notice if you look at the plans that it is 22 earthen terraces encompassing around 87,000 linear feet of terracing. This particular grant was mangrove specific, meaning that we could only put mangroves on there. We did lead a volunteer event in early December. I would be remiss to say that conditions were harsh. I think Joe can probably back me up on that.
Let's play the video.
This
is a 45-second real.
This will give you an indication of what we saw. We do need to introduce Mang to you. They were a Florida-based clothing company with an environmental sustainability mission of buying a shirt. They plant and purchase a Mang somewhere in the world. They've planted almost 1 million of them worldwide. They flew here in December. They will join us again later this spring, and I'll fill you in on that momentarily.
Loaded down. 12,000 of them in here.
12,000.
All right.
That is your founder of Mang.
Black mangroves here. All right. Mangroves are getting loaded onto the boats. We got Ducks Unlimited, Restore Retreat helping us out. Good people out today with us, helping make it happen. Alright, out here with Ducks Unlimited crew. Getting after it.
So this project, just so you'll understand, this was 12,000 mangroves over a 3-day period. You can see some of the actual terrace plans. This, in addition to the vegetative plantings, We also had Natrix using Cajun coral to look at a test plot to see about the shoreline stabilization benefit to the terraces. The terraces, just so you'll understand, they're under continual pummeling coming in off the Gulf of Mexico, so there's a lot of changes that are going on out there. I think Joe and I will, do you want to speak to Woodside's collaboration, which has been a really great one?
Woodside approach wanting to do something in the lower Lafourche area as they operate in the Gulf of Mexico. And whenever we learned that there was a need to get mangroves planted, they kindly offered a $100,000 grant to purchase the mangroves. So that's basically what the money went to. And with the volunteer efforts, the labor was free, and we were able to put quite a number of plants down.
And I think Joe and I have both been exploring the idea of the fact that energy and conservation can and must work together, and this collaboration proved it. We actually hosted Woodside last week. Some of their, upper level executives came out. They did a mini planting with us, and it truly was a wonderful opportunity. You can see the collaborators on this. It started with Ducks Unlimited, which, if you haven't worked with them, I would encourage you to get the opportunity to. They really are the leaders in North American continent conservation efforts for our waterfowl. Mang, Wisner Trust, Woodside Energy, Quality Printing, graciously helped us out with volunteer shirt support. And I will also share with you that we have had some construction delays. We should have had that. We anticipated that we would be planting the second phase of the project right now, but that is delayed, and we're looking at a tentative go date, providing Mother Nature cooperates. We're looking at April 2nd, first week of April, planting of the phase 2. If any of you would like to join us out there, you're welcome to. We'd love to have you.
As a team of two, Restore Retreat, works hard to, as I say, put the cherry on top of great projects that CPRA does, following in behind, getting grants where we can in order to basically engage the local citizenry to understand the importance of the projects in the master plan, how they help their hometown communities build in resiliency and long-term survivability down here on the working coast of Louisiana. And I appreciate y'all time and patience to be able to present the efforts that we do. Happily answer any questions y'all may have.
Representative Lorraine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And having served in a previous life on the board of Restore Retreat, I'm definitely thankful for the organization and thankful to have you both there. Y'all doing a great job and appreciate it. You mentioned on the survivability of the smooth cord and the mangrove as a result of the storm, but is that typically what you see, about 80% on the smooth cord and 50 on the mangroves that y'all have been seeing on the plantings?
We were comparing, when we went out yesterday, Representative Zarang, we actually were trying to compare it to what we had seen on the first phase, and the numbers looked actually right in line. However, the mangroves this time around, because of their exposure to the snow, look to have a few more challenges. Joe and I have been going out to Grand Terre probably every 2 to 4 months over the past 2 years. The first phase, happy to report that you can't really even tell the planting site too much now because it's fully vegetated in with only pockets. And I'll also share with you that our volunteers, some of them decided that they wanted to plant patterns. So you can actually see the way that the volunteers had worked. So 80, 90% on vermilion. Vermilion smooth cord, same thing with the black mangroves. They're very, very strong, hardy plants. We did notice yesterday, and I think Greg may be here to back me up on it, that we had seen some changes in our site plan. So the plan worked, except we were planting in extremely low tide conditions, so we expanded the planting out. So we had a few little areas of washout, but overall, very successful. So we were happy to see that.
Good. There used to be that research facility U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service had. I guess that's not there anymore.
No, so I will share with you the update on that. I truly did not know till November. Well, it actually started out, and that's how Joe and I became working together, was when CPRA asked me if I wanted, as a private citizen, to take on planting restoring Grand Terre, because I can organize things pretty well. And I was in the meeting at the CPRA offices and learned looking at the historical documents, the history of the island, and then recognizing that that was my father on the project design and engineer for the lab, contacting Joe. Joe sat in on that call. Do you remember that, Dr. Joe?
Yep.
And at that point, I knew we would have to find a way to fund that project. I certainly did not know Representative Zarang at the time that he had built a facility that would withstand many storms and train many scientists all across the United States. Once word spread that I was his daughter, I have had the privilege of getting to know my father in a much different way. That structure apparently trained quite a few scientists across the country. It was pretty special. I think the group that was with me yesterday got the opportunity to walk where the Marine Lab was, and I got a chance to reminisce. I've also heard from general aviation pilots that they used to land on that island and do touch and goes. And the island, I'm happy to report, is alive and thriving and growing, and I look forward to Joe and I continuing to work on it.
That's definitely true that Mother Nature has taken her back, and
yes,
it's very evident.
It was pretty special, honestly, to be there yesterday and walking where the Marine Lab was and seeing that the marsh is now back, and the island has rejuvenated and has kind of taken on a new life, and it no longer really has a lot of human impacts anymore. But the animals were there. We did see signs of lots of animals yesterday. I think we saw bobcats and feral hog signs, and as well as numerous bird species. But it's a pretty special island. I would encourage you, if you haven't been there, to get a chance to go.
It is nice, and I know I'm dating myself, but actually I spent time at that facility doing work there when it was functioning. And
It was we do know that the research that LSU was able to do on Dad's work showed that he had built it structurally sound, placing the pilings down, I believe they said 74 feet in the earth at the time. And then it looks like it's based upon people that have gotten in touch with me, that he left an indelible mark on the members of the scientific community with his work there. So
yeah, the biggest problem was keeping the raccoons out of the cistern, but that was a whole nother issue. But
we actually, it was pretty funny. I think Greg can probably back me up on this. We were actually yesterday looking at old photos. Joe was out there with the drone footage, taking drones, and we were trying to figure out where the old fish ponds were that he had created. And we can tell you that the channel that he built, to go into the Marine Lab, it's a marine hazard. I think we can attest to that.
Mm-hmm.
You have to hit it just right to access the island, but it's a pretty special place.
well, thank you all for your efforts. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you.
Mr. Bourgeois.
Yeah, just like a lot of the local NGOs here, you guys punch way beyond your weight class, and I appreciate that. But with something, Paula, you said that, and I'm no botanist, but you said planting sand oaks, and hearing the word oak in something in a coastal planting, that seems to be like a threshold we're crossing.
This was an attempt.
Curious.
I'll share with you that we all know that the coastal zone used to have the oak cheniers. We would see that all the way west to Cameron.
Right.
And I'm no botanist, but I do love my plants. But I was reached out to. Joe, remind me, was it 2023 that we planted the oaks on Grand Isle? We started
Yes,
there.
right.
We planted, I forget now how many live oaks we planted on Grand Isle.
100 oaks with the Grand Isle Garden Society, but on this particular project, that was
Right.
an anonymous gift. As we had the Spartana and the mangroves ready, somebody just said, we have them in pots, sand oaks. You want to give it a try?
And their goal was to try to put them on different barrier islands across the state and see if we can get them to reestablish, like they were 150 years ago or so. I wasn't familiar with the sand oak species. I was more familiar with the live oaks and the water oaks and all those other ones. I have pictures of them if anybody wants to see them. Looked like yesterday, though, upon visual inspection, that although they were all planted really well, 300 of them, there was some scouring and changes in the sand and the shifting because of the impacts of the Gulf, obviously. But we saw maybe 10% of those surviving. We don't know yet till March or April when they start to bud out.
Yeah. Thank you again.
Good morning, and thanks for the two of you for being here. For a team of two, y'all are very impressive. I follow you on social media and the work that y'all do, and I consider both of y'all to be friends of mine, and I understand the work that y'all have going on, and your ability to push out volunteers is pretty impressive. And I want to say that your father left an indelible mark on the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries through his work on that island, and I'm happy to see you carrying that forward in his legacy, and so I do appreciate it. But during your presentation, I got a few text messages of folks from the public wondering how they can engage with you and engage with your volunteer events.
RestoreAretreat.org and use the contact us form. And as I said, I think yesterday, there's a whole bureaucratic thing that goes through down 236 feet. No, just joking. Comes directly to me, and I basically make sure that they get put in.
They can also follow us on social media, and they can go to RestoreAretreat.org. We constantly are continually pushing out, information for the volunteers to join us. We honestly could not do this without volunteers. I know that. I've been a volunteer. I've been on both sides of it. The volunteers at the end of this, ultimately, what they will tell you is that once they've gone out there with Joe and I, yes, it is work. I'm not going to tell you it's not. It's 6 hours, and sometimes it's really great conditions. Other times it's grueling. But they take away a sense of ownership in Louisiana's coastal wetlands, that they have done something for the good of the ecosystem that benefits their communities too. Tyler, on a more personal note, I'll segue for 1 second and digress. Wildlife and Fisheries was near and dear to my family growing up. I think that I'm extremely proud to have the possession of those plans. I do have them at the house. I also had relationships with the late, great Joe Herring and many of the earlier predecessors. We also found out that I guess Joe's dad and my father crossed paths with their work. So it's kind of amazing to get that opportunity to now get a chance to work with you and the secretary and your team too.
Awesome.
So thank
thanks.
you.
And I know there's some pictures on our third floor conference room that are specialty, so we'll keep
Near
an
and
eye
dear
on
to
it
my
for you.
heart. Thank you.
Thank y'all.
And with that, there's no other meeting, no other questions, so thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you again, Chairman Dove and board members. Mr. Ledee, appreciate it.
The next is the Coastal Wetlands Planning, Protection, and Restoration Act, better known as CPRA update, Brian Lazina with CPRA. Mr. Lazina.
I'm going to check. I was going to say good morning, but I have the Neil McMillan spot in the agenda today, so I'll do that. A couple things before I start on CPRA, and I don't know if Polly and Representative Ogeron are still here, but I can tell her dad's place did just fine. It was the beach that was unfortunately not so strong to that. I had the pleasure of serving there 2 years of my life. Representative Ogeron's comment about the hair plug approach reminded me it was in the 90s that I served my time there, and Z's absolutely right. The water had a flavor onto itself of many things, raccoons being the primary in the cisterns there. So it was an awesome place to work, and the team came back yesterday. It was just amazed at the condition post snowstorm and everything else of the plantings, and we're happy to be a part of that for that effort on it. Today, in a similar fashion, a program that's near and dear to a lot of our hearts, the CPRA program. So every year about this time when we get into the annual planning process, we're introducing a lot of folks to projects that CPRA does, funding streams that CPRA uses. A lot of questions come up about why do you do certain things this way? How do those things factor into larger decision making, and a large chunk of the projects that we do are through the CPRA program. This has absolutely been the backbone of the state's coastal program for 35 years now. We hope for 35 plus more into the future. But I wanted to give the board an opportunity to get a little more information about the program, touch on the history a bit, realizing where I am on the agenda. I'll be swift on there, but also to have the ability to obviously ask any questions and see where we're going. So it's CPRA. The full name, Coastal Wetlands Planning, Protection, and Restoration Act, is what you'll see in statute. BRO Act is what a lot of us in Louisiana call this. This was Senator J. Bennett Johnston and Senator John Breaux, with Senator John Breaux really pushing this through, and the take home of all of this is you now have in statute the recognition of what coastal Louisiana and the loss that we're seeing here means to the nation. So not just what it means to Louisiana, but the importance to the nation, this dedicated funding stream to be able to be used for coastal restoration projects in Louisiana. So with that, the money comes from really the Sport Fish Restoration and Boating Trust Fund. Won't get into all the details. You see it right there. So there's a percentage of those funds that are then dedicated, about 18.5%. I know it's hard to read on the right, to the CPRA, the act itself. Now that act just in Louisiana, 70% of those 18.5% comes to the Louisiana program, but some other ones you might recognize on there: Coastal Wetlands Conservation Grant Program through DOI. Those are up to $1 million grants that have been incredibly successful. And NAWCA, North America's Wetland Conservation Act, obviously. And so I think a lot of folks don't recognize the benefit to that. Certainly Mr. Bosworth does. We do as well, partnering with Ducks Unlimited on many projects that has had on Louisiana, but also the nation as well. So that's just a bit of a breakdown. The biggest thing of interest here is that after Louisiana, this was in 1990 that this was signed in by President Bush at the time. After Louisiana completed a wetlands plan, the cost share for this program became 15% to the state of Louisiana. That's almost unheard of on any other federal level. Sure, we have 100% some things now, but for the most part, we're in the 35% range on some of these projects. We're at 15% now, only 5 of which we have to come up with in cash for some of these projects. We look at an annual operating budget for the program between $30 and $99 million. That's fluctuated over the years. Obviously, it's a excise tax and revenue-based system, so it fluctuates with use. But generally speaking, over the last 10-ish years or so, we have a construction budget every year of about $70 million is a good round number. So we'll see 2 to 3 projects we can put in construction every year, like clockwork, dedicated funding through this program, and that's really been the biggest upside. So a little bit of the nuts and bolts. This is accomplished through the act is through a task force, the CPRA task force. You just met the chairman of the task force, Colonel Jones, that was with us. The Corps is the administrator of the program and does the huge heavy lifting to keep all of these things in line and going. The meetings, the funding, all of those items is administered by the Corps. Colonel Jones serves as the task force chair. But also, all of those 5 other federal agencies, or the 5 federal agencies, have a spot on that task force, including the state of Louisiana, through the Governor's Office of Coastal Activities, and then a lot of us serve in various capacities on there. So this was also unique in organizing the entire federal family and all the expertise that comes with that onto a single mission in coastal Louisiana, chaired by a federal entity. Later on, one of the better upsides was we were able to, through the state's coastal master plan, really define where those projects went. They had to be consistent with the state's coastal master plan. The state is a cost share partner on every single one of these projects. Therefore, we're not going to spend a dollar. So as I probably an overused phrase from myself is, everybody's pulling on the same rope in the same direction on there. So we can really focus this program. And what that's done is taken CPRA and made it a part of the state's coastal program, not just the thing unto itself. And that'll be important. The sort of program is organized really with a basin approach. Again, it's hard to see, but you can see the different colors represent different hydrologic basins. They're organized into 4 regions. And why this is important is it gives the public an opportunity for input into the program. So every year, this month, actually, we've just had those meetings. Anyone can propose a project into CPRA on there to be considered for the year's funding cycle. Then the parishes within that current region, there's a list of those parishes there, the state and federal agencies, can then basically winnow down that to a list of 20 projects based on land loss criteria. And you see 22 because there's some coast-wide projects in Atchafalaya, but based on land loss rates in those areas. So obviously we're in Barataria, Terrebonne, you see higher land loss rates, therefore you'll see 4 projects. Those projects then move forward, and I'll get into the process a little bit later through the ability then to maybe make it to engineering and design and later construction. So where we are right now, as I mentioned, is the Phase 0 conceptual project development. These projects will be, I think we currently are around 50 this year. We see 80 or 90 some years projects being proposed. We'll go to 20. And then again, a vote will be taken by the federal and state agencies to get that down to 10. And that's really when we start spending the summer visiting these places, looking at water depths, looking at conditions, trying to get an idea on a feasibility level where we're going to move forward to this into Phase 1, which is really the engineering and design phase. We had moved 4 in the past. We're moving a few less because of backlog, usually 2 now, maybe 3 into engineering and design. And then Phase 2 is where the rubber hits the road, quite literally, when we start to get into construction, management, and O&M. There is a possibility that you could do this in go through the funding or most of the funding cycle in a year. I can say, though, there's a lot of work that goes into these projects on there, but that's generally the process. The types of projects you see through the program, very similar to what we do, again, through the entire coastal program. Barrier Island restoration has been a part of the program. Terracing and sediment trapping, sediment freshwater diversion, shoreline protection, hydrologic restoration, ridge restoration, marsh creation, vegetative plantings on a statewide, and then combinations of all of these projects too. So lately we see a lot of marsh creation, ridge restoration, shoreline protection features put into one particular project just because of the needs we see in certain areas. So some examples you see is sort of the classic marsh creation. This is the Bayou DuPont area. Not only the fill, but in the background you can see the sediment pipeline corridor. So that was a big part about the CPRA program, not just and putting these projects out, but a vision to the future to do that and how we can make these sort of modular as we go. This is obviously something that the state and its federal partners have utilized extensively in the years prior and years post this to build in that area. The other thing CPRA brings to the table is that innovation approach. So you heard about the groundbreaking for the Maurepas diversion, something we're incredibly proud of. This was a project concept back, and you can see, again, the numbers, and I'm going to read you 2 of them. 2001 is on this fact sheet for the CPRA program, and then a little over $6 million was the price tag back then, and so dropped the ball on that one. Probably should have got it back then. It's more now, but $6 million would have been great, but just goes to show the sense of urgency. But again, that started within the men and women of the CPRA program having that vision. And then a lot of times what you also see is CPRA will go into a process of engineering design. The state, our federal partners realize we can take that project, change it a little bit, add some funding stream to it. So what was a 900-acre project under the CPRA program, I believe, in Lake Bourne, is now the largest marsh creation project that the state of Louisiana has done and is currently doing at almost 3,000 acres right there, with that design largely coming from the CPRA program and still being a part of that. And then some things you just don't realize as much. So terracing gets brought up a lot. That's been an innovation and a demonstration project. Shoreline protection, that cute little handsome devil, underscore devil on the right, Nutria. So the Coastwide Nutria program, which everybody has heard of, again, through LDWF, sort of operated through CPRA funding, and oversight has been incredibly successful on that as well. So we look at demonstration projects, we look at coastwide projects, just trying to innovate as well as we go. And the biggest portion for a lot of us that touches Coastal Master Plan I'll speak of is monitoring. So currently, our CRIMS network in Louisiana, largest coastal monitoring network in the world, is primarily funded through the CPRA program, almost $10 million annually. This shapes everything, how we engineer and design projects. We've been able to modify things in the master plan. It's been incredibly important. It's used all over the world on there. But again, just something to say why the CPRA program as part of the state's coastal program is such important. And then the outreach. I know a lot of things focus on, K through 12 schools, or I hear a lot of educators say K through gray. Of course, I went gone, but what we're able to do with the CPRA program is touch the next generation, but also educate the current generation. And so if you haven't had a chance, please get on there, look at some of the tools they can highlight. You see the virtual tours there of projects that we have built in CPRA that many of you on this board were a part of on there. And I think, again, whether you look at it from personal pride, like a lot of the students do, to some of us that are charged with going to find the money for some of these things and the will, it's all incredibly important. So a little bit about the numbers on CPRA. There have been 238, and there's some fluctuation. This is of January, so we've just added a few. But there's been 238 projects go through the CPRA system. These have not all gone into construction. You can see from the pie chart there, some are deauthorized, unconstructable, some conditions change. You see those sorts of things. We transfer to other agencies, so they have gotten built. Or we may, Lake Bourne is a good example that I showed you. But for the most part, we have completed those projects, many of them in long-term O&M, Phase 2 construction, E&D. And again, just a snapshot of where the program is over the 35 years now that it's existed. And then over those same 35 years, again, members, you have this in your packet, but you can see a breakdown of sort of the projects, really the acreage benefited and the money, the expenses in each part of these basins. I mentioned land loss as a driver under the CPRA program selection. So if you see the funded projects, Barataria Basin is obviously the hot spot on there, and Terrebonne Basin as well. Interestingly, if you look on the bottom, though, the Calcasieu-Sabine Basin has the largest amount of net acres benefited. This is slightly counterintuitive, I will say, because a lot of projects there early on were hydrologic restoration projects. So the acres benefited on the sheet can be fairly dramatic, 8,000 to 10,000 acres for some of these projects, even though the expense may have not been there. But just big highlights here are exactly what this program's been: over $1 billion of federal investment, almost $2 billion over $2 billion encumbered. It's about 105,000 acres now of net acres benefited on and growing, which I'll get to in a minute, with the active projects you see spread across coastal Louisiana. So, hot off of the last, our task force meeting in January and approvals, this is what was just voted on. I mentioned the process. It goes through those nominations to Phase 1 approvals. And what we have here is again, just a willingness to the team members to sort of adapt. We had two projects that were very similar in St. Bernard Parish. We were able to combine those projects basically and take a look and say, how can we get the benefits of both in a slightly smaller package and deliver that? And that was voted for engineering. We're excited to look into that. We're also looking at some components of the South Ile-de-St. Charles land bridge and Terrebonne land bridge. This is another one, and it's incredibly hard, as Chairman Dove knows, to work on some areas in eastern Terrebonne, but we want to be able to do that. And so we're taking a new look at some of the master plan projects, going in there and spending a little time, doing geotech, doing other work to say, how can we get a project? Let's go put something on the ground and make sure we're doing it, not just throwing things up against the wall and hope they stick, and 3 years down the road we can't get there. We want to get there, and we're going to get there with some novel ways like this. And then the Grand Chenier marsh creation and terracing out west for E&D. Under Phase 2 approvals, a little bit in the area you saw, Port Fourchon marsh creation, North Delacroix marsh creation and terracing, and Bay Rackersea marsh creation and ridge restoration. And Phase 2, again, is construction. So after designs are updated and complete, these will go out to bid. These are funded. So the way we're able to do this with some extra money that we had was get these 3 projects off the ground instead of 2 for construction. So just last to touch on the process, I mentioned we just had our regional team meetings across all the regions a couple weeks ago. You see them there. Again, we were about 50 projects submitted, I think, from members of the public, state resources, everything else. In late February, which we're in, we'll start to take that first coast-wide vote with the parishes and the CPRA organizations to narrow those down, and we'll work through the process I mentioned, April, May, ultimately making the decision on these projects in this list, what we do for Phase 1, specifically engineering, in the December and January timeframe here. So it's a really big process. There's 180, give or take, folks at CPRA right now. About 175 of them probably work day to day on CPRA in some fashion. 5 of them do. They just don't know about it, probably on there. And I can say the same about the federal agencies, but specifically I want to call out the the effort by the Corps of Engineers and Colonel Jones' team. I think you see today all the things that we all have responsibilities for, and this has been a mainstay of the state's coastal program, and we hope for some time in the future. So with that, happy to take any questions or comments about it.
Any questions, members? No questions? Oh, excuse me, Mr. Corville.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Lazina, for your presentation. I've got a couple of comments, and then I'm going to jump down into the weeds fairly quickly, but hopefully not belabor too many points in advance of lunch. I think it can't be overstated how important CPRA has been historically, and frankly, in the beginning of my career, working for then DNR, I did some monitoring a lot of these early projects, and some of the visionaries, in particular, Senator Breaux. There's only one way to couch that gentleman is a visionary for coming up with this program, and his colleagues and all of the support that he had. Hopefully, we can have some more. We may have one that just gave us a presentation in the form of Representative Ogeron. I know Representative Zarang may have had to leave, but there's a lot of folks over time that have really had incredible vision in building these programs and building these plans. And another group I would say from the very beginning would have been the USDA, actually prior to those, the Soil and Water Conservation Districts and the Soil and Water Conservation Service, where a lot of those river basin study programs that those guys established, decades ago, were actually a lot of those early projects that you saw and that were funded and had real meaningful impact in the beginning of the CPRA program. Where I'm going, and I'll jump down into the weeds and not belabor this point too much, is that this program evolves like everything does. And while it's had incredible benefits across the coast, there are some places that I believe have some opportunity for refinement and betterment of the program in general. So I'm just going to jump into a couple of them. One that is a cause for concern, particularly in Southwest, but actually I appreciate your presentation because it showed me that of the 8 basins, 5 of them, the parishes are outranked or outnumbered by the federal agencies. And as you alluded to, I think it's going from phase 0 to phase 1. The parishes no longer get a vote, and the federal agencies and the state get to vote. And we've seen that over time. And actually, I think you mentioned in phase 1 approvals, there was even one, so I'm going to be obviously a little partial to South Central and Southwest, a project that I'm pretty certain wasn't the parish's highest priority project got advanced. And that's where I see there's a little bit of a disconnect that's evolving in this program. So I would love for CPRA to look at how we could maybe get a little bit better parish representation, influence, and maybe even enable these parishes, those that don't have master plans, because I know several of them already do, those that don't, how do we enable those parishes to build their own master plan with local support? And I will tell you that I think this goes a long way at dealing with, I know a major issue you guys have are land rights. Because look, I'm not going to be bashful. Guys know I'll have trouble being bashful. I need to really control some of the things I say out loud. But what happens is all of these agencies get together, they get all jazzed up, and they overlook this local support, the people who actually own the land, and then it becomes problematic deep into the process. So I think there's some opportunity to get these parishes, build master plans that are science-based, highly technical, frankly, using a lot of the technology and the technical expertise that you guys have within CPRA and even some consultants. Get those master plans, get them right with the state master plan, because I think it can be an asset as you guys, as the master plans evolve. I know that you guys have used some in the past. And then through the process, what I'd love to see, and I live in a dream world many times because it's the only way I can exist, is have the parishes submit projects only. No state, no feds, and then it becomes incumbent upon the parishes to put forward the best project that is the most competitive, that's the best bang for the buck, most cost effective. It's incumbent upon them and not these agencies, because you end up having competing agencies voting on projects that they're going to derive funds from. It's a bad look in my opinion. This way we could make it pure get those projects move forward, and then use the agencies to their best ability, which is to evaluate these things technically. Then each one of them has their own expertise. CPRA has their own expertise. And I think we could get parish priorities moving forward that are the best use of our limited resources in those specific regions, because there's a tremendous amount of local expertise in each of those regions. So I'm going to do my best to stop there if possible. It's just we've kind of we're at a turning point, I would argue, in that program and in this restoration effort. The parishes need a little bit better representation. We need to move those projects, and again, the parishes need to step up their game as well. And I think we have an opportunity. We've obviously got a fantastic chairman. We've got a fantastic governor and a fantastic staff with you guys at CPRA. The opportunity is there. I'd hate for us to miss a chance to make this program even better moving into the future. And my last wish list would be you guys, as you mentioned in here, whether everybody wants to admit it or not, without your match, none of these projects move forward at all. I would love to see, and when I look at this, looks like there are 36 marsh creation projects and only 6 hydrologic restoration projects. So this thing has evolved into a bit of a marsh creation deal. That's probably symptomatic of the WVA process, but I would love to see us evolve to where we look at CPRA's match and have a percentage. You admitted, and I'll admit, the vast majority of the need is in Southeast Louisiana, but over in Southwest and South Central, there needs to be a few projects. They have some issues. I'd love to see maybe CPRA consider having a breakdown where a certain percentage of the money of their match is spent west of the Atchafalaya River. I know what I think the ratio should be, but it's probably not fair, if I'm being honest. But there needs to be a bit of a balance that if we can go and find that. So I'd happy to work with you guys. You guys know I'm never bashful to share my thoughts. But I appreciate your time. Thank you for the presentation. And again, I'd like to a note of appreciation for those visionaries that really got that program started, because without it, I'm not sure where we would be in this state and in the restoration effort. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Corville. And with that, there's no other questions. Oh, I'm sorry.
I was going to have a follow-up too after Mr. Leday, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Mr.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Corville. Yeah, to your original point, the parishes and their efforts to do a master plan is certainly something that we've already started working with. I mean, in Cameron Parish, we've already had conversations with them, and I know Brian's team is ready to support on any technical support that we can provide to do that. And so we certainly think that's a great idea. There are a number of parishes that either have master plans or are updating those, and we think obviously every parish should have a coastal master plan. So certainly working towards that in certain areas may take a little bit of time, and so we understand that. I think in regards to the QPRA program and just the evolution of it, I think Brian, maybe you can talk about next steps there and some of the things that have been done in the past, and then certainly we can work with you on those efforts. But appreciate your thoughts there, Mr. Corville.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for all the comments. I know, Chad, you've been very involved, and that's what we absolutely need from anybody on there, but especially somebody with the knowledge and represents the area. One thing, there's need everywhere, just to make that clear. Everywhere is need. Again, we look at this as part of the state's total coastal program, which we feel everybody's need. QPRA utilizes that metric to sort of push numbers of projects. So I do recognize that from QPRA, but obviously from the state perspective, we see need everywhere. And lastly, so there have been some steps made. We, on behalf of the state, think it's very important that QPRA stay modern to address modern issues and be nimble to do that. So it's obviously a ship that takes some time to course correct on with 35 years on there. I will say that the Corps is willing to do that, the state is willing to do that, and we're constantly trying to evolve so that we can take things as they come on there instead of just being sort of static in the past. So thank you for those comments. I'll get with you on some of these others and we can discuss.
Fantastic. I got one more bite down. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last comment, I got a tremendous amount of feedback and not much of it positive on this most recent selection criteria thing that was sort of unveiled. If I could offer a suggestion, I think that's probably a bad direction, and we probably ought to reconsider that as a foundation block for moving forward. So, but I appreciate you guys' comments. Look forward to working with you. So thanks again. Thank you for everything you guys have done throughout your career. We've worked a lot together, and I really appreciate y'all's efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Corville. With that, the board's clear. Thank you very much, Mr. Lazina. And we have one request to speak, Doug Daigle, Gulf Hypoxia Action Plan. Mr. Daig? Yes. Good evening.
It's not evening yet, but thank you. I'll be very brief. Doug Daigle. I'm the coordinator of the Louisiana Hypoxia Working Group, and we're a monthly forum that works to promote and support the Gulf Hypoxia Action Plan. And I wanted to thank Representative Zarang. Unfortunately, he's left, but for his long dedication to this issue, and Representative Ogeron and other members of the legislature who have repeatedly expressed support for that plan and Louisiana's participation in it in repeated resolutions, over the years. And that's an important indicator of the public support in the state for our participation in this plan. And since a lot of folks, don't focus on this issue, I always like to just, recap the key provisions of what we're working for in the action plan. There was an interim target set in 2015 to try to achieve a 20% reduction of loading to the Gulf from the Mississippi and Atchafalaya rivers of nitrogen and phosphorus. Those are the two main nutrients coming out. And that would have been, would be achieved through the cumulative efforts of all the parties, public, private, everybody in the whole basin. And I can remind everyone as well that this is a cooperative program built around voluntary actions. So the year for that interim target was 2025. Here we are. Later in the year, we'll get a report, I hope, from the Hypoxia Task Force telling us what the final numbers are for that. But it's just a step on the full goal of the whole plan, which is to achieve an average annual size reduction in the hypoxic zone by 2035. And so that may seem a ways off, but we're in the window now of what needs to be done to reach that goal. And so it's actually not a long ways off, and it's something very timely. And so the key part of doing this is going to be federal funding, and it's always been a shortfall of this effort is that there has not been enough. The plan's never had an actual budget. And the funding that came to our state and the other states in this effort in the infrastructure bill and the provision sponsored by Senator Cassidy and supported by our delegation and allies like Senator Wicker and others, that was the first direct funding from Congress to the states on this task force. And the whole time this action plan's been in place, and that's about 20 years. So that was an important provision. It's a modest one. And so that really needs to be our priority now, is to try to get more resources. Obviously, a lot's happening in D.C. There's a lot of uncertainty, about where various things are going. One of the main tools for this action plan is the Farm Bill. And the current one has been extended several times. They're on a 5-year cycle. I know that our delegation and others want another farm bill, but the latest I've heard from folks is that it might get extended again. So we need to have a very robust engagement. We need the leadership of the governor on this, and the most direct connection to the governor is the governor's Office of Coastal Activities. And so this is going to be something with engagement and leadership that we really need for this effort. And so I wanted to bring that up again and encourage that that become the case. Thank you.
Yeah, and from the chair, please keep reminding us, keep informing us, and the hypoxia is definitely it's such a bad situation. It's just getting worse every year, and something's going to have to be done one day about it. So please keep informing us. Thank you very much for that. And with that, a motion adjourned, Mr. Alfred, unanimous. This meeting is adjourned. Thanks everyone for coming, and we'll see y'all in 30 days. Thank y'all very much, and thanks to everyone who presented.